Stan Lee's selection of comic book characters were instrumental in revitalizing the comic book industry. Among the hundreds of characters that he helped to create were the Fantastic Four, Captain America, Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Daredevil, Ant-Man, the Avengers, and the X-Men. Like many Marvel characters, Stan Lee was a flawed hero. Stanley Martin Lieber was born December 28, 1922 in New York City, New York, United States of America. He was born into a not-so-wealthy family of Romanian-born Jewish immigrants. The name Stan Lee began as a pseudonym, which later he adopted as his legal name. Lee eventually led the expansion of Marvel Comics from being a small division of a publishing house to a large multimedia corporation. The 1960s and 1970s were unbelievably productive eras for Stan. In these eras, he wrote the majority of his most famous comics, such as Fantastic Four, X-Men, Black Panther, and Spider-Man. Over the years, he became a public face for Marvel Comics, an American comic book writer and publisher, who was the executive vice president of Marvel Comics. Lee was briefly the president of the entire company before he stepped down because he decided that it was too much money, finance, and numbers, and that's not enough about the creative process he really enjoyed in the comics. Lee quit his regular duties at Marvel in the 1990s, but he continued to receive his annual salary of $1 million. Throughout his life, Stan Lee appeared in countless cameos in multiple Marvel film and television projects. Outside of Marvel Comics, Stan Lee was always one to defend people of all kinds of places and equal rights, especially for people of color. Unfortunately, Stan Lee died at the age of 95 in Los Angeles, California, after being rushed to the hospital earlier that day. He was rushed to the hospital earlier that year because he had pneumonia, but it's still not known if that played a part in his death or if it was just complications from old age. Stan was married to Joanne Lee for almost 70 years until her death on July 6, 2017. The couple had 2 children. It's definitely safe to say that Marvel icon Stan Lee left a great legacy, much bigger than expected. Stan Lee was a tremendous creative force in his own right, and he'll definitely be missed by the world.
The well-known comic book writer known as Stan Lee was born on December 28th of 1992 to Celia and Jack Lieber. Most of his childhood, the writer lived in New York City with his Romanian Jewish immigrant parents. At the age of 9, Stanley's brother, named Larry Lieber, was born on October 26, 1931. The brothers spent most of their childhood watching their parents struggle throughout the Great Depression. As the Depression hit, the family moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, as the parents lived in the foldable couch and the children lived in the spare room. Jack's father, Jack Lieber, was unemployed throughout most of his time as he couldn't find employment as a dress cutter, what's now known as a tailor. Around the age of 10 to 12, Stan Lee would round up his friends and play hockey on the streets with roller skates. Around the age of 10 to 12, Stan Lee would round up his friends and play hockey on the streets of New York City. At the end of the street, there would be someone to yell at them if a car was coming, as there wasn't really much safety precautions when coming to playing hockey with roller skates on. According to NYT News, Stan throughout his life loved reading books. As a child, he would read a book every single time he would be eating lunch or dinner. His mother then had caught on to this fact. He would read anything that was beside him, including ketchup bottles. In fact, one Christmas, his parents got enough money to buy him a book stand in which he could put his books on and eat while reading books. As a child, Lee was a devoted fan of Charles Dickens, the Harley Boys, and Emilio Zola. He attended the DeWitt Clinton High School, later on graduating at a young age of 16 years old. Around this time period, lots of parents weren't fans of comic books, nor the writers of comic books, so Stan Lee posed his name as Stan Lee instead of his real full name, Stanley Martin Lieber. Stan Lee went on to be hired as an assistant in the Timely Comics in 1939. The company went on to become Marvel.
Stan Lee's first writing experience was in 1941 when he wrote a field text in Captain America, which has for main writer Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. After a period of crisis with the comic codes, so Stan Lee took a break, but he got back on his feet after listening to his wife that told him to follow his dream. Taking in consideration his wife's advice, Stan Lee came up with the Fantastic Four in 1961. He wanted to show the world that comic books could be fun and really incredible. And after that, he continued with the Hulk, which was actually a genetically mutated human who was looking for someone to like him because he was really lost. He couldn't even understand himself anymore. He couldn't deal with the new situation. After that, he came up with Spider-Man, which was actually kind of a way for StanLee to show the world how he was his life when he was an adolescent. Peter Parker was an adolescent who was kind of facing many situations, and StanLee kind of showed the story how when he used to go on a date with a girl and he forgot his wallet, and now he has to take the bus with the girl. So it was kind of like showing his life when he was an adolescent. The only thing is that he has superpower, and this is how most people see StanLee in Spider-Man. And after that, he came up with X-Men, which were actually different people, like people with different powers, and he put them together as a group just to show that even though you're different, we can still work together. So in every comic books, StanLee kind of teach the world like how to show the world that there's a place for every kind of people, and that we all at the end make one. So the most interesting comic books that he showed was for Black Panther, was when the world was like facing a racist period. So like the black people couldn't be accepted, and he didn't even have many heroes which were actually black. So he came up with Black Panther just to show that even in Marvels, the black people has a place. StanLee wasn't the only one behind those comic books. Actually, we had Jack Kirby, which was an incredible drawer. Like he was drawing the comics and all that, even though sometimes they had their disagreement, but at the end they still made their goals, pump up. So that's how. When he chose Jack Kirby to do Spider-Man, he didn't feel like Jack Kirby was reflecting his idea. He later found another artist named Steve Ditko, which actually reflect exactly what StanLee was looking for in Spider-Man. Like his drawing was like incredible, and it was like the adolescent that StanLee wanted to show the world with superpower, the adolescent that was saving people, and that's how that Spider-Man was like the most recognized hero in the history of Marvel.
StanLee has had a powerful and positive impact on our society for the past few decades. He's used his comics as positive influences and as positive outlooks on life and how we should live it. For instance, one of his first and earlier comics was the Captain America comics. StanLee used his Captain America comics during World War II to help support the war effort and to also encourage people to buy war bonds, which were used to support the war during the time. The Captain America comics were also used to give America spirit and pride, and one of the most iconic comic book covers for Captain America was a picture of him punching Hitler in the jaw.
Okay.
But not only did StanLee use his comics for political issues, but he also used them for racial ones as well. For instance, in 1966, StanLee, along with his co-worker Jack Kirby, created the character known as the Black Panther to help fight racism during a time where America struggled with racial problems. Since at the time, there weren't many black comic book characters. Another way that StanLee has had a positive impact on society was by creating the X-Men characters. These characters were born with their powers, and they were considered mutants by society. Now, StanLee has said that he created these characters and they were supposed to stand for people who were born differently or had disabilities, and that it was okay to be different. There was nothing wrong with it. So in conclusion, StanLee has created a positive impact on society throughout the many years of his comic book career. With the creations of his characters, he's found a way for every reader of any age to connect with any superhero of any age.
Stan Lee was the most important and by far the most influential person in comics books history. Stan Lee has captured the hearts of people everywhere, every culture, all ages, whether it be young, old, middle-aged, teenagers. Stan Lee has continued to capture the hearts of everyone worldwide, and his creativity continues to capture the hearts and of everyone everywhere, and it continues to bring out the inner children in everybody, no matter whether they're young or old. No matter what age, people just can't stay away from his creations, his heroes, and they all have a meaning, a bigger meaning. Every one of Stan Lee's heroes have a meaning behind them, and I think that's one of his most important impacts in life. With all of his creations of heroes, each and every one of them tell a story, really, and they have a story that they have a point that Stan was really trying to get across to the world, a message he was trying to send to the world. Stan Lee's comics were like, his comics had an influence on people where it would be like an escape for especially children, where some of them weren't as fortunate to do certain things, to get out of the house, to participate in certain events. His comics were like an escape to another world. They were the type of entertainment that really helped the kid's mind work and innovate and really develop. His comics really helped children around the world, where everybody really develop more self-confidence in themselves and what they were able to do and the many talents that they had in their lives that they weren't particularly proud of, or that they didn't really think were special. He helped them believe in themselves and really use their God-given talents to their advantage. Another way that Stan Lee in general was impactful in lives worldwide is that he used his comic books to convey the very important message to people worldwide that segregation and race, people being judged by their race and things like that were very wrong, because he believed that we were all brothers and sisters at the end of the day, that we're all human. And I think that was a very powerful message, and that it got to a lot of people, it got through to a lot of people that would read his comics and really believed in the words that he would put into his work. So in conclusion, the most impactful thing about Stan Lee's career is that he used his platform to convey many notions that were positive to the world, like people were equal in every way, and that people should believe in themselves and what they can do, no matter their disabilities, the way they were born, or how much money they have. He believed that everybody was equal, and that's the most impactful thing about Stan Lee and his whole entire career.